that make up Group D. And once again, we're going to harness your hive mind for a slightly better group name.
Right, so Group D sounds solid, like the kids who got picked last for the kickball team, so maybe not so good. But thanks to all the power on Twitter, you guys came through with some terrific suggestions like don't blink.
Yeah, we had a tie for our favorites, and we decided to combine them.
Yeah, so the majority of you agreed that there were 3 favorites in this group, and we chose to call that triple threat, and that got at Kawaii Ganjin, who got that one together. But because we love the underdog so much, we chose Blue Shell Kaboom from at Gentleman Gustav. That means Group D shall henceforth be known as Triple Threat Blue Shell Kaboom.
Yeah, I actually know what a blue shell is after learning it last week on air. Now, here are those 3 teams and a video game reference that I'm totally aware of. So, first is the number 2 team from the North American LCS. It is Cloud9, along with the number 1 team from the European League Championship Series, Alliance.
Next is the international wild card team from Brazil, Kaboom Esports, and the number 3 team from Korea, Najin White Shield.
Yeah, all right. Up first on our tour of the group is the international wildcard team, Brazil's Kaboom Esports. Kaboom has been one of the top teams in Brazil throughout 2014. They've made it to the Brazilian League Champions Series playoffs 3 times in a row, but they came away without a top 3 finish each time.
However, the team stepped up this year. They took first place at the Brazil Regional, and that earned them the spot to the International Wildcard Tournament, where they 3-0'd Latin American team PEX Gaming, and they became the first Brazilian team to compete at Worlds. Let's take a look now at their roster. In the top lane is Lep, in the jungle is Danagorn, mid lane Tin Owns, AD carry Minerva, and supporting is Dance.
Yeah, and I think I just want to highlight Tin Owns personally, because I think he's one of the mid lane prodigies that came out to the Brazilian server. His Orianna is phenomenal, and he ended up with a 7.8 KDA during the course of their international wildcard tournament run. It's definitely a player that Kaboom are going to be looking at to carry them and work alongside. But it's the shot caller Dan's that is standing out and has had a lane swap that allowed him to grow. Phreak, do you care to add?
Yes, he's a converted AD carry player there. He's filling up the shot calling role for the team, and he's been incredible overall, right? He had a great KD during the international wildcard as well. So far, so good for this team. And what I love so much about this Brazilian team is that a little bit like China and North America, where they started importing a whole bunch of foreign players, this is a team that stuck with an all-Brazilian lineup and shot past all these sort of Korean-laden rosters, and have done so well with the homegrown talent pool, and it's been great to see him go.
Yeah, talking about importing some Korean talent, let's talk about the Korean team in this group, and it is the number 3 squad from the region, Najin White Shield. Najin White Shield has been one of Korea's top 5 teams all year long, but their strongest finish came when they took 2nd place in Champions Spring.
And their point total narrowly qualified them to compete in the Korean regionals, but they swept the KT Bullets 3-0, they swept the KT Arrows 3-0, and then they took down defending world champions SK Telecom T1K 3-1 in the final match, and they earned that last spot at Worlds for Korea. Let's check out the starting lineup now. In the top lane, Save, one of the best top laners in the world, absolutely. In the jungle is Watch, in the mid lane is Goong, AD carry Zephyr, and support Gorilla, the original OG Janna.
And the mid lane trend will continue, as Goong is one of our players to watch. Monty, we always throw the Korean information. What's your thoughts on Goong and, you know, this squad?
Yeah, Goong is a very interesting player. He's very mechanically adept, but he's always had a very small champion pool. When Nidalee and LeBlanc got nerfed, we did see Shield kind of fall back off. Now he's resurged with Zed, with Ahri, with Orianna, and that's what he showed very dominant play on during regionals. Is he going to be able to be easily banned out? That's kind of the question moving into the Group D games.
Yeah, and I've got another question, because I know you've got a little bit of a man crush on the top laner Save. So tell me a little bit more about why you like Save so much.
You know, I refer to Save as the last of the top carries. He and Flame are very much at the top of their game. And this guy is just ridiculous. Huge KDA, 7.81 during the Korean regional finals, and he had that 100% win rate on Kale. Very, very dangerous on Ryze as well. Can play unorthodox top lane carries like Kha'Zix and Zed. You don't know what this guy is going to bring out, but watch for him to have very good teleports and a just hard carry from the top lane.
Just a little bit of pressure there from Monte Cristo on his shoulders. Right, this is going to bring us to the number 2 team from North America. It is Cloud9. Cloud9 have been one of the most dominant teams in the LCS ever since they earned their way in last summer, and this marks the team's 2nd trip in a row to Worlds after Fnatic knocked them out in the quarterfinals last year.
Yeah, a bit of a short run there in the 2013 World Championship, but they came back, they took first place in this spring split, split this year. And although their rivals Team Solo Mid finally beat them for the first time in the playoffs, these guys still took second place in the playoffs. Pretty darn good overall. Let's take a look now at their starting 5 roster. In the top lane is Balls, in the jungle is Meteos, High is their mid laner, AD carry Sneaky, and supporting is Lemonation.
Now, this is the team that's been doing very well in Korean solo queue. I want to ask a little bit about Sneaky, Doublelift. Sneaky's sort of one of the quieter AD carries from North America. How's he going to do on the world stage?
So before, I felt like he took a back seat. He wasn't really a carry, like a big force to be reckoned with. His job was primarily just to go even in lane and just kind of shine in team fights or later stages of the game with rotations. But nowadays, he really stepped up. His laning has improved a lot. His synergy with Lemon has gotten to the point where they're actually consistently winning lane. And their mid-game rotations are just all focused around the AD carry, actually. Sneaky's getting a lot of farm, a lot of kills, and stepping up.
I mean, that backseat point actually ties back to Meteos as well. He was known as a jungler that used to farm a lot and just had this stigma around him that he would never gank. But he stepped up this game, diversified his plays, and just improved his champion pool. At the start of the year, his Lee Sin wasn't good. He even said that himself. He kept playing it because he was smart enough to play that champion without even having mechanical proficiency. But he stepped up his Lee Sin game. He has a better champion pool right now, and he's just a really smart jungler. So I'm looking forward to see him perform on the world stage.
And I actually want to see if they've added some more strategic diversity to the roster, because every single game in playoffs, they just lane swap Sneaky and waited for team fights. I want to see what else they've learned this time around and see if they can do something new at Worlds this year.
Well, they've had a lot of time in Korea to learn those new tricks. Another team that has will be the last team in this group. It is the #1 squad from the European LCS. It is Alliance. Alliance is the super team that was put together by Froggen last December after his teammates and Evil Geniuses left to join the North American LCS.
And they actually had a pretty rough start to the spring series of 2014. They finished in 4th place in the playoffs, but this summer they've worked out a lot of the issues. They started dominating the European LCS. They even dethroned Fnatic for the first time as King of the Splits. They took first place in summer playoffs. They're the #1 team in Europe right now. Let's take a look at their starting lineup. In the top lane is Wicked. In the jungle is Shook. Mid laner is Froggen, who put the team together. Tabs AD carry, and supporting is Nif.
Yeah, I think you hit a really good point there discussing Froggen, and it is his team. He feels a lot of pressure to perform, and this team was put together to win. Quoting him directly. Froggen is a player that is potentially considered to be one of the world's best mid laners. Crepo, you've had the pleasure of knowing him for many, many years. How excited will he be to be back on the international stage?
I think he will be very excited and just wants to prove to the world that he's still a solid top-tier mid laner. I mean, I've known him for a while. Let's call it what it is. Our team wasn't good enough anymore at that point, and he said, hey guys, we're good friends, but I want to move on. I want to try my own thing. And with all respect, he's very outspoken in that regard. He's very honest. So that's why we're still good friends right now. And I wish him the best, but it's going to be really hard for their team to match up against some of the other teams in this group.
Yeah, we'll have to see how they do. Somebody who's a little less outspoken, but equally talented, maybe. Tabs in the AD carry role. Doublelift. Have you watched much of Tabs? What do you think of his style and his play?
I have watched much of Tabs because he's actually getting more and more outspoken within the community, and he's a really solid AD carry. He's just been kind of overshadowed in terms of statistics. He's got less kills, he's got a worse KDA, and he's got a really strong champion pool, but not quite as good as Reckless throughout the regular split. But actually in the playoffs, he had a higher KDA than Reckless and performed, in my opinion, a little bit better. So I'll see how well he does on the world stage. This is his 2nd time returning. He's no stranger to going to Worlds. He went with the 1st place team again last year with Lemon Dogs. So I feel like Tabs has a lot to prove.
All right, with that, it is now time to leave the base again and take a look at the lanes as Monte Cristo leads us into the laning phase.
Thanks, QuickShot. When considering the teams in Group D, I have to keep the focus on the mid lane once again, just like Group C. So let's check out the players in that role and see where they rank here at laning phase. Number 4 probably won't come as a surprise. Tin Owns from Kaboom. He's definitely the strongest laner in his region. Unfortunately, that region is still up and coming, and we're talking about the World Championship here, so he is going to be overshadowed by the other mids in this group. Number 3, I'm going with High. High's obviously a very strong shot caller, but is a bit weak when it comes to his laning and his champion pool. Now, I do think we'll see an improved High due to his time in Korean solo queue. I think out of any player who went to a boot camp in Korea, he had the most to gain. Number 2, going to be Goong from Najin White Shield. He had a strong performance throughout the Korean regionals due to his mechanical skill, and he was instrumental to taking down last year's world champs, but he still has that small champion pool that's plagued him. He's also been rather inconsistent over the course of the year, and I feel he could be targeted out with bans if he hasn't broadened his pool in the last few weeks. Number 1, It's going to be Froggen from Alliance. He's one of the top mid laners in the world, certainly. He comes into this series with a very large champion pool and that consistency that we look for in top players across metas. He plays a very calculated style, he knows his limits very well, and he's always relevant in game. So that's going to be your laning phase for Group D. QuickShot, back to you.
Thank you very much, Monty. Once again, I'd like to hear from you whether or not Monte Cristo was right or wrong. Let us know what you think by ranking these mid laners and also telling us why. You can send your answers to @LOL Esports with the hashtag Worlds Preview on Twitter. Let's stay in the mid lane, although this time that mid lane is a hell of a far way away in Singapore, where Rivington Bisland III sat down with Cloud9's captain. Hi.
Thanks, QuickShot. And right now I'm happy to be joined by Cloud9's captain and shot caller. Hi, how's it going?
What's up, dude? Just got here in Singapore. It's pretty hot.
Right on. Well, let's get right to it. This is your second trip coming into the World Championship. What's the difference between last year's championship and coming into this one?
Well, a few things. First off, we get to play more than 3 games this year, so I'm happy for that. And we're also over in Asia. Last year we were back in LA playing right next to where we live, and now I'm all over here in Singapore. Never been here before and playing a game I love.
Right on. And how are you guys actually feeling about that group stage? Because you guys usually seeded out of it. Now you got to play. What are you thinking?
I'd like to say our group is pretty hard. There's obviously 3 favorite teams to come out, Najin Shield, us, and Alliance. Basically, when we got second place at playoffs, that made our group, or our possibility of getting our groups, much harder. So it's kind of our punishment, I guess, for not taking first.
Speaking about that second place, it's the first time since Cloud9 has been in the LCS that you guys don't grab the title. What was the feeling of the team?
I think it depended per person. Some people were more mad, some people were more sad, some people were just like, it happens, or they just weren't expecting to win anyway, just because how practice was going. So depending on who you ask, they'll give you a different answer.
All right, and obviously everybody, as fast as they could, took off, got to the boot camp in Korea. What were the benefits? What did you guys draw from that?
So we got to practice for 3 weeks in Korea. We learned a lot here. If we got to stay here for another year, I'm sure we could compete against the best Korean teams over and over. But we only got a limited amount of time to practice against them, and the limited amount of time we did get, we've learned a lot in 3 weeks here.
And while you guys were boot camping in Korea, did you guys figure out that you needed to focus more on Cloud9 or focus more on the teams you were competing against?
We had to focus on what they were doing to beat us, basically. So we look at what they're doing and be like, hey, how are they doing this? Why are we like losing? What are they doing better than us? And then we learn from it and try to fix the problems that we were doing. And it went pretty well, actually.
And which team are you guys looking forward to face at Worlds if you get the chance?
Well, I want to win Worlds, so obviously I don't want to play versus a Korean team, but sadly there's one in our group and you'd have to face one to get to the finals anyway. So I guess I'd like to play versus Blue as the most, just because they are on our side of the bracket, and I want to play versus Dade.
All right, Hi, final question. What would it mean to you, to the team, to win Worlds?
To win Worlds, we haven't thought about that because it's a far stretch, but in the case it did, it basically make us losing at playoffs not matter anymore. It would show the world that the Western teams can actually compete against the best teams, and it would give me a lot of money to go do things and have fun.
All right, Hi, thank you very much for hanging out with us today, and best of luck to you and the team at Worlds. And right now, we're going to go ahead and send it back to QuickShot and the guys at the desk to go over more matches in Group D.
Thank you very much, guys. Interesting video. One of the things I like whenever I hear from Cloud9, and Hi in particular, they're very introspective and relatively down to earth whenever they analyze their own play, their own skills, and their own power. Talking about play, skills, and power, it's time to go down the line and find out from you guys who you think will be advancing from Group D to the quarterfinals. We'll do it in reverse of Group C, so I'll start with Phreak. Who is your top 2 teams and why?
Well, the first thing is not going to be reversed. The Korean team is going to top the group. I think no one's really surprised here. Najin White Shield are incredibly strong, especially that run down the Korean regional where they like 3-0'd KT Arrows, who was like, oh my gosh, they're so amazing. Suddenly they get 3-0'd by these guys. So ridiculously strong team overall. My number 2 is going to be Cloud9. I think they underperformed a little bit in playoffs. Just seeing them advance in Korean solo queue, like 3 of their players are in like the top, like, are playing so many, like if you rank like the LCS players coming over to Korea playing solo queue, 3 of them are in the top 5 here. They're playing a whole lot. They're incredibly dedicated, and I think they're going to go far.
Crepo, you're next on my hit list. Who's 1 and who's 2?
Yeah, I obviously think White Shield is just going to win the group all out. So the second place is, again, really the important one. It's either going to be Alliance or Cloud9. Initially, I would have taken Alliance, but right now I'm feeling Cloud9 just by a little bit, like a 55 to 45 split. I think Cloud9 is just going to perform a little better if they patch up a lot of their problems. Also, just in terms of individual power, I think Balls, that matchup against Wicked is something I want to watch. I want to see how those bot lanes match up. They're so equal. I want to see if Hai can handle Froggen. There's so many interesting matchups, but I think overall, in terms of team play, strategic prowess, I think Cloud9 is just going to come out on top.
So once again, similar votes. Double lift. Is there any chance that Alliance is going to beat either Najin Shield or Cloud9 in your mind? Who's your 1 and 2 and why?
Well, my number 1, again, is Shield, like you guys say, for all the reasons that you guys said. But my number 2, Cloud9. I didn't believe in TSM when I should have, and I definitely believe in Cloud9 now. My mind has kind of changed. I think the matchup to kind of watch out for between them and Alliance is the jungle, because Meteos is so dedicated and just so good. He's always been so consistent, where to me, Shook is pretty hit or miss, and he relies a lot on Froggen to do most of the work, and then Shook can kind of get in there and play really aggressive, but Meteos is so cold and calculated. He's the KDA king, so while all of their other lanes kind of match up equally, I would say Meteos overshadows Shook just by a little bit, and so I give Cloud9 the edge.
So another one. We'll see if this is going to be a clean sweep. Monte Cristo, what is it about Shield that is going to give them the edge in this matchup, and who's your number 2?
Yeah, I do think Shield, especially when we talk about save, is going to come in number 1 in this group. But I will just kind of put a damper on some of these expectations. If I think that any Korean team might get tripped up here, it will be Shield. They've been kind of inconsistent this season. They went from the finals and Champions Spring to barely making it out of groups in Champions Summer, and then immediately losing to the KT Arrows. Also, when we look at regionals, that was the best I've ever seen Watch and Zephyr play, and there's no guarantee that they're going to step up that much again here at Worlds. So that's a little bit of a caveat. I still put them in number 1. Now, number 2, I'm going to agree with you guys. I think Cloud9 has this. I know from observing a lot of the boot camp that happened before I came out here to LA for the desk when everybody was in Korea, I know Cloud9 got the best practice out of all these teams. I also think they had the most to gain from this practice. And when we think about strategy, Cloud9 is the best Western team in terms of strategy, in terms of rotations. I'm going to take them by a hair, just a hair, over Alliance.
So according to our analysts, it's a unanimous decision for 1 and 2, and that would mean the number 1 seed in the group would not advance. So interesting thoughts here from the analyst desk.
I think it's funny that we're all unanimous about ranting and raving about how good Cloud9 is. We're like, oh my god, Cloud9's so good. 55-45. Alliance could do it. And that's like it.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see how close you guys, the experts, are with those predictions as the games in Singapore kick off on Thursday at 11 a.m. Central European Summer Time, which is 2 a.m. Pacific. The first of Thursday's 6 matches features North America's LMQ taking on China's OMG, with Cloud9 facing Kaboom Esports to finish up day number 1.
And on Friday, Najin White Shield will face Alliance to start the day, and Samsung Blue takes on LMQ to close things out.
Yeah, and of course, starting on Saturday, the matches will shift to a new starting time, so please take note of that. It will begin with Fnatic versus OMG. That game will begin at 8 a.m. Central European Summer Time, which is actually 11 p.m. Friday. For those of you in the Pacific time zone, that is 3 hours earlier than normal.
And that same schedule is in effect for Sunday's games, where Kaboom Esports kicks off the final 6 matches when they take on Cloud9, and barring any more tiebreakers, we'll close out Singapore with a OMG versus LMQ battle.
We'll have to see how that turns out. To whet your appetite for the action ahead of this week in Singapore, let's take a look at some of the biggest plays that happened in Taipei.